Hi. In this video, we're going to discuss a specific approach to investigating the non-dual sense fields. If you're not sure what that means, you might want to take a look at an earlier video I made called What is Non-Duality? Also, if you're working toward that first shift called First Awakening and are more interested in self-inquiry or making that first big transition in identity, you might want to check out some of the earlier playlists like Approaching Awakening or Basics of Awakening. Now, if you are working toward that first awakening, toward that first big shift, it doesn't mean that this video will not be valuable for you. It just may be a bit ephemeral or subtle. It may be a little bit hard to understand what I'm pointing to, and it could be frustrating. So in that case, don't get too frustrated. Just continue to work on that self-inquiry or working toward that first shift. If you do resonate with this video, it doesn't actually matter where you are in the whole process of realization. If you resonate with doing work in the sense fields, then by all means enjoy the video. So the idea for making this video arose out of a conversation I had with somebody about working with the visual field specifically when it comes to non-dual realization or clarifying non-dual realization. And one of the things I said to him, which I've said to people many times before, is what you're looking for isn't a big deal, it's subtle. Or sometimes I'll say, don't worry so much about the content of the field that you're experiencing, the labels, the meaning, what it means to you. Concern yourself more with the subtle aspect. So this person I was having a conversation with asked me what I mean by subtle. He pointed out that I didn't clarify what I meant by that, which led to a good conversation between he and I about what I do mean by subtle, or what it is that I'm suggesting you attune your attention to in the visual field, or even in the auditory field or any sense field, when I say, look into the subtle aspect. So the first thing I want to point out about this is that when I say subtle, I mean subtle in contrast to the texture of mind, the texture of thought. By making a contrast, it might become a little bit more clear. If we just pay attention to what we occupy our minds with, or the content of thoughts, we'll see that without labeling, thoughts don't get very far. Labels, designations about here and there, self and other, that, this, these kinds of simple designations about objects are kind of the building blocks for thought. And then we very quickly build from there to a narrative about what's happening right now, the scene or the event or the circumstance of what's going on. And then pretty quickly that leads into a narrative that includes the past and the future, where this came from and where it's going, and what we want out of it, and what we're going to do to get it. Yeah? So these are the ways that we build up very quickly, usually not noticeably, from labels to contexts to narratives, storylines, a sense of control. So if you look at the quality of all of these mental constructs, they're all solid, predictable, agreed upon. Most importantly, they're all learned. At some point, we learned labels for everything. And by doing so, we started to perceive reality as divided up into small pieces. Some things more important, some things less important. Some things farther and some things nearer. Some things more interesting, some things less interesting to us. Once we started dividing up reality in this way, we started utilizing a mental faculty that we're often not even aware of. It's a very subtle form of thought, but it's an overlay. It's an overlay over the sense fields, over the immediate experience of now. And this overlay distorts the nature of the sense fields in their pure form. It makes things look continuous that are not continuous. It makes things look solid that are not solid. It makes things seem as if they're on some sort of spectrum of value between more important and less important. To me. It always points back to me, right? So this layer of processing, this layer of dividing, labeling, and starting to build importance or lack of importance into our experience is going on all the time, whether we know it or not. But the important point about it is a thought. It is a series of thoughts. It is thought stuff. It's not actually about the sense fields. So there's a sense field. There's a sensory experience. Non-dualistic, meaning not here or there. Sense experience that none of that actually applies to. And you can experience it directly. So the pointer to what is subtle means attuning your attention to what is none of those constructs. What is not here or there. What is not important or lacking of importance. What doesn't have a label. What you can't actually determine as being either you or not you. Because all of that is content laden. It is of the mind. It is of thought. It is gross in comparison to subtle. The subtle is what is not thought, what is not even non-conceptual thought, which is the overlay. That's what we're attuning to. So it might start by feeling like an instinct. It might, and often does, come with the mind revolting a little bit and saying, this doesn't make any sense. I can't find it. I don't get it. Those thoughts are very normal for beginning this investigation into the subtle nature, because the mind can't get this. The thought process will not be able to pick up what we're talking about. It's actually too close. It's too primary. But more importantly, it's too subtle, at least in terms of this contrast between the grossness of thought constructs, labels, overlays, templates, and the subtlety of being neither here nor there, and both here and there. So that's the sort of subtlety we're looking into. Another way of talking about this is to say that what you're looking for isn't what is there, especially in terms of labels and mind stuff and things we can talk about and share with others or ourselves internally, but putting your attention on what's not there in terms of those narratives. Now, when I say not there, I run a risk of inducing another thought of blankness or blackness or space. And I mean, not that either. There's something that's too close, too all-encompassing, too real, too everywhere, too unbound by distance or space, too present to be discussed as if it exists in time. That is what we're talking about. That's what I mean by not there. It's not there in any way that you can put your finger on and describe and discuss. But it's definitely there. It's definitely here. Even here and there stop having meaning in the way we're speaking right now. One way of saying this is notice what's there and what's not there at the same time. Notice the visual experience right in front of you, whether it's a shape, a form, colors, movement, patterns. So notice all of that. And at the same time, without turning your attention from that, also notice what's not that. Not there. Not only there. Not distinctly there. And you can perceive both at the same time. This is to perceive the gross and subtle at the same time. The mental constructs, the visual overlay, and also the subtle truth of what's actually occurring, that the mind is trying to make into solidity, continuity, and put at a distance. So again, this second approach is notice what's there. The visual experience, the forms, the shapes, colors, movement. And without changing that, or discounting it, or arguing with it, or disregarding it, also notice what is none of that. And it's right in front of your face. It's right there, right here. So that is another way of approaching this. So a third way that we can look into the subtle nature of the sense fields is turn your attention to sound, the sound field. Just take it all in. The surrounding sounds, the things we usually ignore. You might even notice a ringing in the ears, the voice, the music. Just let it all come in unfiltered. Now, do you notice how it's changing all the time? Notice how, without thinking, there's no pattern to it. We're in the immediate as we receive this sound experience, unfiltered. There's nowhere this has ever happened except here. That contact point between the sound experience and whatever's receiving it, without thinking about it, without imagining what that is, or imagining two sides. That immediacy that's ever changing, ever shifting, never the same moment twice. You might start to notice a certain subtlety to that experience, almost like a silence within the sound. It's subtle because we can't talk about it, but we can definitely receive it. We can definitely participate in this experience fully. And when there's full participation, notice that even the receiver of sound is just one more thought. Without thinking about a receiver or an ear or a body, there's just that sound. And in that, there's a certain silence and sound at the same time. It's neither loud nor soft. It's neither meaningless or meaningful. We'd have to think to add that to it. It's just that. It requires no effort. Making patterns requires effort. Noticing the patternless nature is effortless. Noticing it's not even coming from somewhere or going anywhere requires no effort. This is the subtlety I'm referring to, the effortlessness. It requires effort to think about sound, describe it to ourselves, label it, imagine where it's coming from. That's the gross aspect of thought constructs. The subtle aspect is just the sound, not coming from anywhere, not going anywhere, neither heavy nor light. Just sound. So, attuning to the subtle aspects of the sense experience can be done during meditation. It can be done during exercise. It can be done while you're washing the dishes. It can be done while you're walking in nature. It can be done while you're laying in bed, getting ready to fall asleep. There's almost no time that this cannot be investigated, because the subtle nature is always there. And what happens over time when you teach yourself to attune to the subtle is that the gross thought constructs, the content of the mind, the labeling, the purpose making, the extrapolating into the future or trying to figure out where everything came from, just gets quieter. And the subtle gets louder, in a sense. It gets more interesting, more juicy, more everywhere, until what's not there becomes more interesting than what is there. Or where nothing meets everything, that contact point is the most interesting thing there is, because it's everything, and it's everywhere, and it takes any form, and it can take no form. And it's sound, and it's sensation, and it's taste and smell. And it's the boundless nature where those all interpenetrate one another. There's no need for identity here, because there's just full participation of the sense fields into themselves. There's no outside to this. There's just vivid experience. So outside and inside lose meaning. Awake and asleep lose meaning. Coming and going lose meaning. Practice and enlightenment lose meaning. These are all simultaneously existing realities. Everything is living truth. Everything is awake nature. Let me know if this was helpful, or if you want to hear more videos like this. Have a good day.